right, so let's go ahead and lower the opacity on this layer. We're going to do our refined drawing here, so I'm going to lower this one even more. Okay, make a new layer, set this one to multiply as well. We're going to bring our brush size down even more. And this is probably going to be our final line art layer here. If we need to do another one, we will though. So let's go ahead and start sketching this in and darkening things up. I'm going to bring up my opacity a little bit and darken this a little bit as well. Okay, and let's actually I'm going to not start with the horn. I'm going to start with the eye. So I'm actually already looking at this thinking we're probably going to do one more layer on top of this. It's always better to have to do extra layers and get a little tighter than to mess up and need to go back and fix things, but you've already committed to stuff. That's the worst. So it's okay to do more layers. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. In fact, I recommend that. So okay. So I'm making sure I'm picking up a little bit more of these details, trying to get a little bit more refined with my lines so that it's not so loose, and taking out a lot of the guesswork so that when we go to paint this, we don't have to try and guess where certain lines line up and stuff. We can just look and see pretty clearly with the line art where things are supposed to go. Okay? So that's why we're trying to come in here and get a little bit more detailed. And just so that his teeth aren't overlapping here, I'm going to have his mouth be just barely open. All right, which means we'll need to clean this up. Clean some of this up as well. So we're just filling in his mouth here. Reworking some of the details here so that everything makes sense. All right, there we go. No, that doesn't quite look right still. We really want to, especially since this is going to be photoreal, we really got to make sure that the proportions and everything line up correctly. Otherwise, even if we render it really nicely, it just won't make a lot of sense. I might end up needing to kind of sketch out the structure of the head here. All right, there we go. That looks better. There we go. That looks better. Now, the reason why I'm able to make this kind of look like a chameleon, even though I didn't use references, because I've done a lot of studying of animals and practiced a lot in my free time. So I've kind of built up this mental library of anatomy and reference of what these creatures look like. So for you, even though I didn't use reference, you probably should, unless you're already at that point, okay? Just go look up whatever it is you want to draw, whatever it's going to be inspired by, and come up with some good reference photos for it so that you can make it look accurate. Because if I hadn't done all that practice and really put in the time and the effort to really make it look good, then it wouldn't be turning out this well, and it wouldn't look as much like a chameleon as it does, right? I wouldn't be able to draw upon that information and accurately portray that. So make sure that you're using reference, or at least doing a lot of studies before you just jump in to draw this, because that's really going to help you when you're trying to design your own creatures and make things look realistic. If you don't do that, you're definitely going to have some problems, and you might end up getting pretty frustrated. So don't get frustrated, just practice. I'm using my lasso tool to just rearrange some of the shapes on his face a little bit. Give us some more room for different things. Okay. Working his toes here, trying to think about those in perspective and how they might interact with things and look. His shoulder blade here. I'm going to turn the layer below it down a little bit more. So I'm getting a little bit too much interference, and I want to be able to see more clearly what layer I'm working on. Okay. Doing this other hand now. To make things a little bit more straight here, we really want it to feel like his hand is stretched out here. And let's rework these toes, they're a little large. Okay, there we go. Excellent. And I think also part of the problem is that this is too far stretched out. It needs to be a little shorter in order to make a lot of sense with where the rest of the anatomy is. So something probably a little bit more like that would make more sense, I think. Okay. And then we'll do his back leg here. Just pull this whole thing back so it's not touching that other foot. Excellent. Let's see, we have his wings and his tail still, as well as some of these details down here in his legs. So let's go with the wings real quick. Think about the anatomy of these wings in perspective instead of just drawing them flat or, straight up. Really trying to think about how they might lay and fall against his back. Okay, wings are something that's pretty hard for a lot of people to really get right. So what I recommend is really studying a lot of reference photos. It's good to look at other artists' ideas of how they do wings, but it's also really good to just study things like bats and things in nature that have wings already, because you're going to get a lot of good ideas from those. Okay. So yeah, this is still pretty loose. We're going to end up doing one more pass on top of this to really help solidify things, because we don't want it to be quite this rough. Shorten that. Okay. He's got these nice big claws here on his wings so that he can climb on trees and different stuff like that. When he lands from flying, he can just come down and clamp onto a tree there or something. Alright. His tail down here. And I'm working in here under his belly. Figuring out where exactly all of this stuff goes. Yeah, the wing is still pretty messy there, so we're definitely going to need to do another layer to help clean that up. But we can start to bring in a little more of these muscle groups here. And we'll get a little bit more refined with the scales on the next layer. Focus on that last one. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're just going to stay in the same lecture. But let's go ahead and make a new layer. We're going to set this one to multiply. Let's go ahead and lower the opacity on the one beneath it. And the one beneath that will lower even more. And the one beneath that will really push back as well. Okay. There we go. And now on this layer, we can, I think we'll be good to go on sort of finalizing some of this stuff. So that's ready to paint. Okay, so got the nose, the mouth. Do we want some up on his head? I don't think we do, actually. I'll leave it smooth up there. But we will do a couple on his eyes here. I think in order for these horns to go in the right angle, we're going to need to bring them down more like that. Went along nicely. Let's see, we're missing still his ear. Go ahead and do that. Let's do his neck here. We are going to have these little spines show up on his neck, his back. Alright, so that hand looks pretty good. Let's move on over here to the other hand on the other side. I'm just thinking about the anatomy that's beneath these fingers and these structures here in order to get the shape right. So once again, if you don't have a lot of practice, your best bet is going to be to look up some reference. I think that's probably the number one biggest mistake I see in beginner artists' work, is that I can tell they either haven't studied their source enough or they're not using reference, and that causes their art to look kind of fake. It doesn't have a lot of the detail they would like it to have, and you know, it's a relatively simple fix. It just requires effort and time, and a lot of people don't want to have to put that effort in, and so they don't. But then it ends up showing through in their work. So make sure you put the effort in and understand what it is you're drawing and what you're trying to go for. Move on over here to this back leg. Trying to get some more wrinkles in here. This is a pretty wrinkly guy. And these toes here I think need to be a little bit longer to kind of help match what else is going on with the other one. So go ahead and bring him down like that. No, that doesn't look great. We're probably just gonna have to go ahead and redraw them really quick. So let's do that. I want to make sure that these aren't looking funky or anything. Okay, there we go. That looks a little better. Bring in rest of this wood texture up in here. Perfect. Let's work these little spikes down the back here. They'll get smaller and smaller and smaller until they pretty much just disappear there. Okay. That tail in there. Excellent. Another thing I'd like to do, well, really quick before I do that, let's tighten this up a little bit. It's a little bit too big there. Alright, so another thing I like to do at this stage as well is to just go ahead and flip the canvas. It lets you get a fresh take at things and see if there's anything that's out of perspective or that kind of looks weird or anything. And I think something that looks weird is his neck and his chest here, that it doesn't fill out enough. And that it should come more like that, I think. There you go. Alright, and besides that, I think everything looks good, so let's go ahead and flip it back and keep going. His claw here. Okay, so we're working these wings now. Those are looking real good. Got the other side over here to do. Okay, awesome. So those wings look great. Everything is about done. The last thing I want to do now while we're on this layer is go ahead and add some scales just everywhere that we're going to have them. So I'm thinking about the reference that I've studied before and what I've kind of memorized in my head about reptiles and chameleons and alligators and stuff like that, and just other photos I've looked at and how I want to do this. And I think I want kind of these, instead of going with like the beaded look that most chameleons have, I want to go with more of this plated look. Okay, so that's what we're going to do for most of it. On his head though, I think we're going to keep things pretty smooth on that part, on top of his head. So remembering that these plates, these scale plates, they need to be following the form of the arm or whatever it is that they're on. So that's why I'm curving some of them, is because I'm trying to imagine that they're wrapped around these shapes instead of just sort of sitting on top of them. You might notice I'm not doing every square inch in scales, right? I'm just kind of going around to a few places that I think would benefit from having them, but I'm not trying to overdo it on the whole thing. It can be tempting at this point to just kind of get sloppy, and because I mean you've gone pretty far and you've done a lot of drawing and you just want to hurry up and finish and move on to the color, but make sure that you take your time and really render everything equally as you go through and get to the end. Even though it might take a while and it's not necessarily the funnest part possibly for you to sit and do all this tiny detail work. Some people like it, other people don't really, but it's worth it to really sort of take your time and make it all the way to the end. So don't just throw in the towel and speed through it. Make sure you go all the way and really take your time. And then all we have left now is his leg here. So let's go ahead and finish those up. And I want to make sure I'm getting these right. Those ones looked kind of weird. And then let's bring in some of these elements of the log. Alright, so keeping it pretty loose in the log here because that's not going to really be the focal point. We're going to be using a lot of photo textures for that anyways, but besides that, I think that looks really great for our rough drawing here, and we are ready to move on to our color phase. So that's it for this lecture, and I'll see you guys in the next one.